All right, great. If you need a break partway through,
talk loud.
yeah, if you need a break partway through, just let me know.
Yeah, Tom, she's hard of hearing.
Okay. All right.
I just lost one of my hearing aids, so.
No. Okay. Can you start by telling us your name, full name, and where you grew up?
I don't understand you.
Can you tell us your full name?
Yep. Yep, you want me to do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, my full name is Gertrude Elizabeth Johns Papp. I was born on 12/19/28 in my grandmother's house. My mother had gone over to visit my grandmother, and a snowstorm came up, and she didn't make it home. So the woman next door happened to be a midwife, and she came over and she delivered me before the doctor got there. So, and what do you want?
What town did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in the town of Greenport. At that time, we lived on Maple Avenue, and I think I lived on Maple Avenue, the town of Greenport, all my life. I went to the Greenport school. We graduated in 1943 from elementary school, and from Hudson High in 1947. I took the Manpower Development Program and became an LPN in 1964. I challenged a lot of the, what do they call them? The things that you needed to get your diploma, and took the Richardson exam and became an RN in 1974. That's my college, my education.
Okay.
In 1947, Frank had come back from being in the Merchant Marines, and he had 1 year to finish his school. So he came back to Hudson High to finish his last year. We met, and in September 14th, 1947, we got married. Okay. We lived in Albany for a little while. The first apartment we had burned, so I came home to be with my mother, and he went and lived with his sister up in Albany. He was a milkman delivery with one of the milk people up there, I forgot the name. And then he went to a soda delivery. And after Eileen was born, in about 1951, he was offered a job down here in Hudson with Color and Salt Water, and he became a delivery man. From then, when he hurt his back, he went to Prudential Insurance, and from Prudential Insurance he became a salesman for Culligan, which he retired from at 62. I went, after the kids grew up old enough to take care of themselves, I went to the Manpower thing, became an LPN, and I worked for the Memorial Hospital, Greene County, put in 26 years, and I retired in 1991. There's all kinds of stories in there.
Oh, yeah. Can we back up a little bit? Can you tell me your parents' full names and your grandparents?
Okay.
Yeah.
My mother and father were Lillian Elizabeth Moore. She lived to be almost 100 years old. Her birthday would have been 10 days after she died. Her father was Henry I. Moore, and I've got, in my genealogy, I went back to 1600s in him. He was a part of the Halleck genealogy, and he bought a land in Long Island, and I was told there's a Halleck museum down there. I haven't been able to get a hold of him yet, because when I was told that, we were in the middle of a pandemic. Her mother was Elizabeth Dewell, and her parents were both natives of Ireland. I haven't got very far with them. My father, he was Earl Anthony Johns, and his father was David. His mother was Jenny Anthony. She died about 10 days after my father was born with complications from the pregnancy. They were both from Swansea, Wales, and immigrated. Now the story with them is my grandfather had a brother William and a brother John. William came over into Ansonia, Connecticut and worked for a foundry. He went back and the boss told him, if you got any more brothers, bring them back with you. And he brought back David and John. The immigration man when they came over said John would be too, that was their name, John, John, no S. He said that would be too confusing over here. And he added an S to their name.
Oh, okay.
So that's how that was. And they lived in Seymour. My father, in the meantime, went to live with one of his mother's sisters in Canaan, New York. That's how he got to New York.
Okay. Do you have any stories from either family that have been passed down through the generations? Anything?
Not
Things of that
really.
nature?
Not really.
Okay.
My grandfather died when I was 3 years old. He was Henry Moore, and he's the one that was from the Halleck family. I don't know my aunt, my grandmother, and my aunt and uncle, I'm saying the grandmother and grandfather and my aunt Ethel lived on Columbia Street. And when she married Lawrence Hanson, and she moved about 3 houses up from us on Maple Avenue, so we were always close. My grandmother, she was Irish. She loved to jig and she loved to sing. So whenever we went up there, my aunt would play the piano and we'd do the Irish jig. So,
Okay.
and she always babysat. My siblings, there was 5 of us, and I was the second one. My older sister's already passed on. I still have a sister in Hudson and a brother in Myrtle Beach. My youngest sister, Helen, was born with septic holes in her heart, and she was sickly all her life. We were told she wouldn't live to be 7, and she died at 79.
Oh, wow.
So she lived a life, and thanks to Dr. Ela Bliss, she was the one that decided that her problems were also allergies. So, and that's where I get all my allergies from.
Okay. You mentioned your husband, Frank.
Yes.
Can you tell us his full name and some of his
His
background?
name was Frank Ladislaw Papp. Ladislaw is a Hungarian name. His mother and father both were from Hungary. She was Elizabeth Boak, and he was Joseph Papp. The story goes that he jumped ship in New York City, so he was here illegally for a long time, and then eventually he was always afraid that with 5 kids he was going to get sent back, but he eventually became a citizen. His mother, you like this one? she during Prohibition she made bathtub gin.
Oh, okay.
And one day the police came to the door, and her oldest daughter, Rose, was sent to the doors while her mother got rid of all the paraphernalia that she had up. And Rose never forgot it. She was scared to death.
And do you know how their family made their way to Hudson or Greenport?
My father was he was a boss. He ended up a boss. And he started out in the Knickerbocker Cement Company, and then it went to the Lone Star Company. He worked there from the time he was 18 to 62. And he was a boss. And everybody that worked under him loved him. It was many years after he was dead, they all come up and told us how nice he was to work for.
Yeah.
My mother, when she'd taken my sister to St. John's hospital down in Virginia, and for evaluation, and when she came back in order to pay the bills, she went to work in the Universal Match, which was only across the road from us. She worked 6 to 2, my father worked 3 to 11. So there was always somebody home for us. She was a typesetter, and she worked there until she retired.
Yeah.
So that's my family.
Okay.
I got my kids.
That's right. Your husband's family, how did they, you said they might have jumped ship in New York City.
There was
How
there was 5 of them too.
Okay.
2 boys and 3 girls. Their father was very, very strict with them. The girls went to work and they turned their paycheck over to him, and he gave them enough money to wait till the next week.
Oh.
They weren't supposed to spend any of the money at all. They were characters. They lived right in the city on State Street.
Okay.
So they had a number of movies, and Frank and his brother always went to the movies on Saturday, and so knew all the Western people, from Tom Mix to some of the men. I didn't think of that. I was trying to remember names. At 92, your names aren't there for you anymore.
Yeah.
And he worked for her father. I don't think her mother ever worked,
Okay.
but the father worked at the Atlas Cement Company.
Oh, okay. Okay. You mentioned earlier that you worked at the Green County Memorial Hospital. Did I catch
Memorial
that?
Hospital.
Okay.
Well, I worked from the time we were 14 years old. At 14 was in the middle of the World War II.
Yeah.
The farmers were having a harder time to get people to work, so our family and another family up the street went over to Seal Marshall. That's the farm that Eagers now have,
Okay.
where they have their farm, the farm place that they sell things. From there, I went to work in F.W. Woolworths in Hudson. At 16, I worked on Thursday nights, which was a big night for Hudson. Everybody got their check on Thursday, and they all came in shopping. So Thursday night and Saturday, I used to work there. When the kids got old enough, I went to work. I never worked when they were little. I didn't think we picked grapes. We packed apples, we did the things like that while they were in school, but we were always home for them when they came home. And I went to work for Kresge's, and I only worked there a short time before the manpower thing came up, and then I spent my life as a nurse.
Okay. What year did you start as a nurse? And I believe you said
1974.
Okay, and then you retired.
And I'll tell you, I don't think I could be a nurse anymore.
Okay.
We used to take care of the patients.
Yeah.
While they were waiting to go to nursing homes, we'd give them baths, we'd wash their hair, we'd soak their feet, and cut their toenails if they needed to. You can't even do that. You're lucky to see a nurse when you go in the hospital now. And everything is done by computer. The one thing that was funny was I had both my knees replaced. And everybody that worked for Dr. Gorzinski came in and told me I had mirror knees. And I said, what the heck is mirror knees? Both of my knees are exactly the same from everything. And so they call it a mirror thing. It must be rare because they drove me nuts. But my knees are fine. I had that in 2009.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about?
You have to talk louder.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your church that you went to?
Oh, it's church. When we came down here in 1951 in Linlithgo, and we never went off the road. We lived in a house next door to where Sharon lives. with no bathtub, no bathroom, no toilet. So I said, I'm not using an outside toilet. We got a chemical toilet, and we stayed there about a year when the next door neighbors moved to Arizona and asked us if we'd like to buy their house. So we bought their house and we lived there until Sharon and Art came back from Naples, Italy, with 3 boys, and we built a little house in the back, and I still live in that little house in the back.
Okay, yeah.
The church was right across the street. I grew up in the United Methodist Church. We were married in the United Methodist Church on Warren Street in Hudson.
Okay.
But when it came down here, I had Sharon and Eileen, and I went in with just the 2 of them. I went into Hudson. But then when Frankie was born, 3 of them was too many for me. So I said, I'm finished. So because I went in a snowstorm and it took 45 minutes to get in there, and I turned around and came back. I never even went to church. And that was on a Sunday, and Monday morning Mary Cooper was at the door looking for somebody to teach Sunday school. And somebody had told her I was teaching Sunday school in Hudson, so then we started going to I took the 2 girls and we went to the Livingston Memorial Church there on Wire Road. We've been active all our lives. The kids joined it. What did we do? We did more things. I taught Sunday school. We had a youth group, which we took roller skating up in Round Top. We took camping up in North Lake. That was a deal. It was so cold. The first thing we did in the morning was call Loretta and Al Bender and told them to bring blankets. And we had one guy that he talked all night long. He relived his whole day by talking all night long. So it was quite a night, but we had a lot of fun. We took the church hall was always open to anybody that needed it. And we had our youth group there where we also taught them about Jesus and the Bible. But we had dancing, we had covered just suppers. The church and the firehouse were the main drive for the people in the community. It isn't anymore. We don't even have a firehouse. But when the men were called out to a fire, the auxiliary got behind them and made sandwiches and coffee and took it to them. But there is no firehouse, so that's gone. The church is still very active. Or at least they were to the pandemic time. There's once the first Friday in the month. The women make subs and sell them, and the money goes to charity. We have our church services outside, but it hasn't kind of been rainy the last month. But we have our church service and got it set up so that anybody can come and not worry about getting the virus. We didn't have to go in the house with the mask and all that stuff. Okay. They're very active. When Joe Lisma came here, we had clam bakes. I have to tell you that story. We were all set to go to a clam bake, and Mr. Mazzara came over and said to Frank, I got a baby skunk in the bottom of my house where he had his water pump and stuff. So Frank said, it's only a baby, it can't do anything. He went down and he got squirted. Babies have squirts too. And here we were all dressed to go to the clam bake. So he stayed home and took care of his skunk, and the rest of us all went over to the clam bake. We also celebrated 100 years of the 1970 it would have been. The church was built in 1970. And in 1970 they had all kinds of things. Our 150th was 220. which we weren't able to do anything. So I think they're going to have something in October, if I'm not mistaken, that they're going to have a special day to celebrate what we missed.
Okay.
Can't think of anything after that. The community, you want to know about the community?
Were there any other big events in church history while you were?
I didn't hear you.
Were there any other big events in the church?
In the church?
In the last few decades.
100th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
They all had a great big thing when the kids all graduated. That was all with Reverend Joseph. They just were very active all the time, and everybody in the community was either involved in the church or the firehouse. The firehouse had minstrels. Now you can't have them anymore. And the women had the sub sales. The men went to the firehouse every year. They had that big parade. They went to that, and they used to stop at the bars on the way home, so they weren't very happy when they got home. The men in the firehouse and the church all got together, and they used to meet and play poker. They had poker things. We were bowling, roller skating. We went on Ruth and Stanley Wright had a little barn. It wasn't being used, and a whole bunch of us. And they were from Germantown, Linlithgo, any place around. And we used to go up there and have a Victrola, and we used to square dance. So then we started following Charlie Radowitz, and wherever he was going to play, we used to go. So we were out in Greene County one day, and he came up to us and told us to leave. He said, the people here are getting a little violent. He said, you don't want to be around. So we all left. But most of the time we had a great time with Charlie Radowitz.
Why do you think, besides the fire department being sold, why do you think...
I can't...
why do you think there's not as many community events in
because the
Linlithgo?
people there aren't the same people. I don't think this... I talked to Ruth Wright the other day. She's 98, and I'm 92. We were both born in December, and we're both the only ones around left of the whole group. Everybody else has passed to heaven. The people now, like on our street, most of them are from the city, that they wanted to come up. They don't like the city anymore, and you can't blame them. But they're very friendly. They just don't get involved in the stuff. Like the church. At my age, I'm not as active out in them, so I can't say they're not active because I don't know. I don't know half the people that live there anymore. But they all seem to be friendly enough when you go out.
Okay. Do you remember the train station in Linlithgo?
The transition from
there? Yeah, on Station Road.
I don't think it was, I think it just gradually came. People started buying homes like the Ferrises.
Yeah.
They bought homes, and then he was called the mayor of Linlithgo.
Oh, who are you talking about? Who are you referring to?
What are you referring to?
Yeah. Who was the mayor of Linlithgo? Who was the mayor of Linlithgo that you just mentioned?
Mr. Ferris.
Mr. Ferris.
He bought a house, and he would come up. Now their daughter was Mildred Miller, and he and David had a big dairy farm. They had, and in fact, one day I missed my son. He was about 2 years old, and I went looking for him. And Mrs. Ferris had him in the middle of the road by Charlie Schroeder's house, store. And she was talking to him until I got there. And her daughter married my son, Peggy Miller. That was something. But they had a big farm. There was a lot of farms, small farms, which aren't anymore. There's only the big farms. Bender's had a dairy farm. Klein's had a fruit farm. White's had a dairy farm. There's always the Hermitage. Mr. Brown, I think his name was Francis Brown, he used to have a big garden, and he'd pick up the vegetables and put them in the back of his truck and peddle them all around the village. Anybody that wanted fresh vegetable could. Charlie and George's store was always there whenever you needed anything. If you ran out of something you were baking, you just ran down to the store. Very convenient. And if you needed gas, he had a gas pump and a thing. And then the Lighthearts took over there. But they always gave the kids a lollipop, George and Charlie. Any kid that came in got a lollipop, and that's what Frankie was going down to get. I was trying to think of some of the farms that were around. Barlotta's have been around forever. Miller's, there's Fixes, and there's Eagers, but they're bigger farms. They're not little farms that they used to have, just small family farms. And I don't think you'll find that any place. I think that's gone out with the times. Everything is electrified. I even had to learn to read a new telephone, cell phone. It's driving me crazy, but I'm learning it.
Can you tell us about any big events in Linlithgo in your lifetime?
Any big events? Now,
Yeah,
I don't know if Sharon remembers any of them.
Fires, anything.
Well, there was always fires.
Yeah.
And that amazed me because you don't hear the fires. I don't think Linlithgo had a fire in years. But we had a lot of migrants up that was in around the village from Barlotta's. And I don't even know if they don't come anymore. Everything is pick your own.
Okay.
But they would go out and drink, and they start fires with smoking smokers. I don't think you have the smokers that you used to. The people that used to go to sleep with a cigarette burning, that would be another thing. No, I don't remember any real big special things except the things in church and the...
Can you tell us about the migrant daycare center that the church had?
Well, the migrants, they were fine, except that except on Saturday they like to go out and drink, or Saturday night, and you would see them around. I know one of the big things was Camp Duro. That was a Jewish camp right down at the end of our road. Rose and David Walensky ran it, and it was for the Jewish, and it was for the children, just for the summer. And my husband was a constable, so he would be called down, because even then people were harassing different people. So they would harass the kids in the Jewish camp because they were Jewish. And he'd go down, and when he showed them the badge, they all dispersed. When the camp was kosher, and Dave couldn't wait for it to close so he could have a ham sandwich. They had a dog, we had all kinds of dogs. But the one thing about animals and pets is now they have to have them on the leash. We lost more dogs to being hit by cars. I know 3 of them anyway. That's a good thing, that they have to. It saves a lot of animals. Everybody, you talk about farms. We had a little farm of our own We had 2 horses, and George Sharp, young George Sharp, well, he's not young anymore. He had his court. We had Bartender, Sonny, and Pronto. And when we got rid of them, my husband decided he was going to have pigs. Now we already had chickens, and we already had sheep, and now we're going to have pigs. So he brought home 4 little pigs. He built a little shed, and he made a little thing for them so that they could go out. Well, it was raining out. And those little pigs went in, when he put them in the shed, came out, and he didn't put the boards close enough. They squeezed through and took off. He was chasing them, and of course, whenever he caught them, they were all wet, and he was all wet, and they jumped right up. So next door was a man, Decker, Mr. Decker. He had a dog named Queenie. Queenie was trained to round up animals, and all he did was say, "Round them up, Queenie," and Queenie went and brought her back, and Frank then shut the door so they couldn't get out, and he let him right back into the shed. So that was funny, but they grew into big pigs. And the second year we had them, we had 350-pound pigs. And they went right through the side of the barn that Frank had built. Right through it, made a big hole. He was pheasant hunting. And I said, "Oh, Lord, pigs will follow anybody if they got a pail with slop in it." So I went out, found them. They seen the pail and started following me. This car stopped as we were going across Wire Road, and I looked at them, and they looked at me, and I said, "They're pigs, P-I-G-S." And we continue up. Well, that was the last day those pigs lived. The next day they were gone. But Rose Decker and Charlie Decker lived right across from the street where Arlene and Phil lived. And after he died, he had cancer and was dying from cancer. And she came up and told me, "You made his last day so funny. Every time he thought about those pigs and you going up the street with them," he said he had to sit and laugh. So I made somebody happy, not me.
What kind of farming did you do besides pigs?
Oh, we had rabbits. We had all kind of little things. My father wanted the chickens because he didn't like the chickens that were in the grocery store. He said they didn't bleed them enough. So when we killed the chickens, he made sure they bled enough, and that made him happy. He was one of these people that everything had to get done yesterday. You can't wait till tomorrow or today. It should have been done yesterday. And he rushes through everything. Sharon had goats when she was young. They like to eat things like shrubs. But they were always born her babies were always born in the wintertime, so she'd have to bring them up and put them in the tub during the night so they wouldn't die. We had all kinds of dogs, all kinds of cats. When Frank was out at night, he decided that I needed a dog in the house because my other dog just had died. And he brought home a 6-month-old German Shepherd. And we only had him a few years before he died. So me and that dog became companions. But he was my dog. He went after a rabbit one time, and I had him on the leash, and he took me off my feet, and I went belly up and right along about 10 feet before he decided to stop. I couldn't stop him. He was a strong dog. Things like that. I'm trying to think of things.
How many acres did you have? How many acres in Linlithgo did you have to?
I don't hear you.
How much land did you have To farm?
Almost 3 acres.
Okay.
And then Sharon, when we divided it, we took the back end and Sharon took the front end when she bought the house. It wasn't big, but we got a lot of stuff done, and it made your food thing. People should be doing it now. They shouldn't be dependent on stuff going over to China and being taken care of and then being coming back. Look how long they're being waited before you get them. And I understand one of my neighbors is starting a homestead. I haven't seen any yet. I know they got chickens because the rooster's always crowing. No matter when you go outside, the rooster crows.
You mentioned the Deckers. Can you tell us about some of your other neighbors?
Deckers that could.
Yeah, can you tell us about some of your other neighbors?
Oh, my neighbors. Well, on one side was Lapinas. Now they had, excuse me, they had chickens in their barn, and they were there before we moved in. And he moved out. He went into the service, and he moved out and left all the food there. So when we got there, we had rats that were big as cats. That was outside, so that was Frank's tartar practice. Across the street from them was Percy Sheffer. The house we bought, that we lived in, was Sam Sheffer's house. And his mother lived on one side of it, and we lived on the other side. And across was Percy Sheffer. There was a lot of Sheffers around. And he was an old man then. But he said his father was a young man, and he planted maple trees all along the side of our road. I think Sharon just took the last 2 down. The most of them fell down. They were, because when we were there 60 years. We've been in Linlithgo 70 years, which is a long time. I lived in Greenport, and I lived 2 years in Albany, and that was enough for me. And Linlithgo 70. I'm 92. That takes care of my whole life.
You mentioned earlier, can you tell us what school you went to and graduated from again? Can you tell us what school you went to?
What stores we went to?
What school?
What school?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I went to the elementary school in Greenport. Mm-hmm. Now they had, the elementary school was 1st through 3rd and 6th through 8. The 4 and 5 in kindergarten were up in the cemetery. The building is still there.
Okay.
It's in Cedar Park Cemetery, and it's on 10 Brook Lane.
Okay.
When you go down there, you'll see this brick building. It's the last building as you go around the corner. And that was our school for 4 and 5. My mother drove, and she had this little car. And everybody from the street that was in 4th or 5th grade grabbed hold of the car. They were on the running boards, they were on the back, and they were on everybody's lap. And you couldn't do that now. In fact, the cars don't have running boards anymore, and they don't have rumble seats. They were a lot of fun to ride in. When I was in there with the kids, I had a car. I can't remember the names of stuff. But I used to take all the neighbor kids down to Dale's Bridge. We didn't have running boards, but boy, they were all sitting on everybody's lap, and we went down where they learned to swim down at Dale's Bridge. I can't remember the name of the thing. I think her name was Coons. Was there a Coons that used to teach it?
Jean Coons.
Who?
Jean.
Yes, Jean, that's her name. I couldn't think of it. She used to teach them how to do it. And all the kids learned how to swim there. One night I remember, that was when Billy was a baby. We had one of those scanner things in the house. And some woman took a baby about 18, 19 months old out at night in the, you might remember it, some of you might remember it. The baby, she lost the baby, and the baby, they put a screen up at the mouth of the Hudson River, and they found the baby. It was dead. She goes, why would you take a baby out at night?
What year was that?
Oh, that Frank, let's see. Billy was born, he's now 50, so 48 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
He was about 5, so it's got to be 43 years ago. And we don't have a scanner in the house anymore. That's not a very good thing to have when you got other kids. But we always had fun. My family was always close. We still have family reunions, and Frank's family was close too. So they're all gone, but all the kids still get together up at Frankie's house, and we have family reunions. We bought an above ground pool, so that the kids. Oh, I loved that. That was my job, taking care of it, and I loved to swim, so everybody would come down on Sundays. And of course, with nursing, you never had Sundays off. You're always working on a Sunday. And but everybody would be there, and they had made supper. And Frank's favorite was the walnut cake. He always made a walnut cake, and so we were all set for supper. Everybody had a good time. I cannot remember really, but any time that we were really bad, we weren't very happy when my grandmother died, because she died June, the year Sharon was born in September. And she was the happiest person in this world that she was going to be a great-grandmother and never made it.
Wow.
So we were all sad. I was sad when Sharon was born too, that she wasn't there to see her. But that's life. You have to take the good with the bad.
Do you have any memories you'd like to share from going to high school in Hudson?
I think everybody in Hudson is, there's nobody there that I know anymore. The last one was Reverend Johnson. And I knew him because he worked for the hospital before he became a minister. And but in our church, the Coopers are gone, vendors are gone, the Stanley's gone, but Ruth is there. Who else? Ruth and Stanley had 5 kids. They were all similar in age to Shannon. And what we would do is one of us would take him down to the school programs, and the other would go pick him up. And that's how we did that. But we always had, like Memorial Day. But Memorial Day, we all went down to the Germantown parade. When they were in Scouts and Cub Scouts and stuff, they participated. And we always went up to the cemetery and listened to the service. And then we'd come home and we'd have a big picnic. The Benders, the Wrights, Beckers, Ivy and Bob Becker. He was the Sunday school teacher for a while. And we'd all play, we would play we'd have softball games after we ate, and that was a lot of fun.
Tell them about your time in high school.
Tell us about your time in high school.
My time in what?
In Hudson High School.
I don't understand.
Tell them about when you were in high school.
Oh, when you were in high school. Well, I don't. Hudson High was completely different then. They now made junior high is now, well, they're not even in junior high. I think the elementary school became our high school. We weren't allowed to wear slacks. And we would walk from Maple Avenue down across the athletic thing. It didn't make any difference how cold it was or how much snow. So we always wore our slacks underneath our skirt. But as soon as we got into school, we had to take those slacks off. We weren't allowed to use them. We had to be dressed in a dress or a skirt. And, well, I was a cheerleader. We had football. Frank used to play football until he was taken, he felt it was ought to go into the Merchant Marines. He was colorblind, so he couldn't go in the Navy. But the Merchant Marines made him a guard anyway, so I said to him, how do you tell the difference between red and green? Because if you went to a stoplight that was just red and green, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know whether it was green or red because they all looked the same to him. In fact, he saw a green dog one day, and he said to his partner, he says, I've never seen a green dog before. And his partner says, that dog's not green, it's brown. So but he had a good time. And then I remember one time we were out in the car and Muhammad Ali was, I don't know who he was boxing with, but we stopped going and we just pulled over and listened to it on the radio. And of course, Ali won. He was the only thing then. He was the only man that was there. But when we went to school, we weren't able to go from school to school like we did at the end. We had our basketball and our any sports. We had to have it so that the sophomores would be by with the freshmen and the seniors would go with the, you got a lot you're going to have to cut out here. But we always had sports, no matter where we went, it just was, but when we did, we went to Lansingburg, Berlin, Saugerties. We did those smaller schools, and we had a glee club that we went to. I always sang in the glee club, always sang in the church choir. You can't sing worth a darn now. What else?
Can you tell us what year and what church you got married in?
Yes. We got married September 14th, 1947 in the United Methodist Church on Warren Street at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. The minister had said that we were getting married at 2 and invited anybody that wanted to come. So when we walked into the church, I thought, oh my goodness, it was chock full of people. We have a big family, and then you have a church family. And Frank's brother, Joe, was the best man. And he got up in the front, and as I was coming down the aisle, he said to him, it's not too late yet, Frank. So Frank put the ring on the wrong hand, but that's part of getting married. And as I said, we went up to Albany. We lived on 2nd Avenue. 2nd Avenue now is not a place that you want to be. But when Frank's brother got married, he married a girl that I worked with in Woolworths. And we got a house. We lived upstairs and then they lived downstairs. It wasn't in good condition, it needed help, so they gave us 3 months free rent if we'd fix it up. It was in Cemetery Avenue, right next to a railroad train and a greenhouse and the cemetery, the Albany Rural Cemetery. Not the one up the top, but the back entrance. So when I went to learn how to drive, I wasn't going to let Frank get in that car because he said, you're never going to learn how to drive. So his brother would take me up on those windings in the roads in the cemeteries and taught me how to drive that way. When it came to taking my test, I asked the woman next door, Anna Tchaikovsky, I said, would you take me down? Because I had to have somebody that once you took your test, you couldn't drive anymore. She took me down, and I passed in the first time. And I came home, and the first thing I do about a month later is have a little accident with a car. Oh dear, I haven't had any since. But,
Can you tell us about some of the trips that you took?
Oh,
You mentioned North Lake.
yes, when I came down here, when I retired in 1991, the first thing we did was join the Southern Tier. They met in the Claremont Firehouse off of 9G, and Mary DeFalco was the trip planner. She was one of the best trip planners you could ever want to send. We went to, we took a bus down to one of the railroad stations and grabbed the New Orleans Express. And we went down from there to New Orleans. That was the thing. Halfway there, the train hit a one of those big trucks with the logs in the back, and immediately we stopped. I think they came in, and where we were sitting, there was a big axe. I never seen such a big axe in all my life, but he grabbed that over top of the seats and went running. So then one of the conductors came in and told us what happened, and he says, "You're going to be delayed." Delayed is right. We couldn't move the train until the inspectors came. And they had to inspect the trains and the railings in order to let us go. And they had to get the truck off of the railroad train. The driver of the truck wasn't hurt too much because they hit the passenger side. And the conductors told us that how lucky we were. He said the whole train could have been derailed if they hit the part where the logs were in. And when they let us come, we started out again, but at the next station we had to stop again because the whatever you call engineer had to make out forms and do it all. Well, they were there so long that we all got outside and we walked around and looked all over the place. And we were supposed to be in New Orleans at 5 o'clock and we got in there at 10. But New Orleans was great. We spent 3 or 4 days there. We came from there, we stopped at the Graceland. We stopped at the Arch. Now where's that?
St. Louis.
Yeah, we stopped in there. We all took our turn and went up to see the top. Oh, it was beautiful up there. And they came down, and then we went to a horse farm. It was a horse farm, and they had everything, and we saw that. We came back to Chicago, and from Chicago we took a train back to Hudson, and the bus met us in Hudson and brought us back home. It was fantastic. The other one that stands in my mind was the one to Mackinac Island. Mackinac Island is fantastic. There's no motor vehicles there at all. No motorcycles, no cars, no nothing. And it's so nice and so quiet. And they have so many places for you to see. We had lunch in this great big, huge dining room. I've never seen such a huge dining room. And in order to get there, we had to take a boat over. So it was great. And we came back. We stopped at I can't remember the German town that we stopped at, but we got out and we looked all around and we all bought souvenirs. We stopped at the Ford Museum. We stopped at the Thomas Edison Museum. And everything was, she just knew how to put a trip together and make it work. So we had and it was a whole group of us that went. Now when Frank retired before me. He died 3 years before I did. And in 1991, I had spent all my life putting money aside for a trip to Alaska. That was my dream, and that's what I was going to do. So in 1991, we took the boat and the train, the ground thing. We went, all the things we saw were unbelievable. We went through Mount Denali, with the in order to get there, you had to go through wild animal thing. And we went to a fish fry, and had them up there. The amazing thing was that you go to bed at 11, 12 o'clock, and you wake up at 3, and it's still bright and light. One day, 5 o'clock, we walked, we were in the hotel, and we left the hotel and walked to the grocery store that was down the street. But it was just like daylight, 5 o'clock. They only had a couple hours of dark, and that was amazing. And then we took a 3-week trip by car. We had AAA make out a trip. That was funny too. I'm not a very good person to read a map. And we got to Ohio, and I was driving, and Frankie says, I think we're going the wrong way. And I said, I didn't see anything out there. Did you? No. He said he got off the thing. He says, we're going away because the next thing we seen was Toledo, Ohio. And we had to come all the way back. And I said, well, you said you never been to Ohio. You can't say that now. But that was a nice trip. We went to the Canyon. We went to a number of different ones. And we just took our time and we went up, and then we came back. When we got to New Orleans, we never got to Orleans. It was raining so hard that we couldn't see where we were. So we pulled over till it got enough and then we returned and we went back to Kentucky, where we went to their zoo, which was just as great as New Orleans. And we came back home, because after 3 weeks you're ready to be home. I took trips out to my sister. My sister Jeanette lived in Saratoga, California, and I took a trip by myself. My mother and father was out there, and they came back with me. And then when Frankie was in the Navy, he came in San Diego, and I went out, and he came up from San Diego, and we met. That was the first time I'd seen him for a couple of years. He was on one of the big airplane. Can't remember.
Carrier.
The carrier. As I tell you, 92 you lose, your names don't come out. So that's my trips.
Were there any other community activities that you were involved in other than the church?
Oh, at our club? Well, we had all kinds of activities at the church before I even joined the church. But down there we had ice cream socials, we used to have our 4th of July in the rec place, because that came up, I can't remember when that was there, but we used the pavilion and had that, and it was catered, and somebody catered, it was nice. We played bingo, we played all kinds of games that are on the thing, and we had speakers. We had some great speakers. The assessor from Livingston, and I can't think of his name, he came down and talked to us one time and told us what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and there was a lot of help. And of course, everybody that was new, that was setting up a new business, wanted to talk to us, because the seniors were the ones that were doing all the buying at that time. But yeah, she had all kinds of trips too. We had a show for about 3 years. It was, we all would dress up and we would mime a record. And we had a lot of them. A lot of people came to that. That was Mary DeFalco too. She was really very clever, creative. They're all gone. All the people that we went to is gone. I don't know anybody that's left that we used to go with. That's what happens when you live too long. All my doctors are gone. They're either I had to go find all new doctors. The one I've had the longest is the one with all our eyes. I've had him for 20 years. So.
Do you remember doctors making house calls?
I remember Dr. Orr. I heard of Dr. Henry. Mary Coper used to work for him, but I never met him. We had Dr. Orr, Dr. Kuchinas, I think that was his name. I took Frankie to him one time. He got his finger caught in the cedar cloths or whatever, the seesaw thing there. And he had to have stitches in it. And he said to him, of course, he was my brother's schoolmate, so I knew him. He said to Frankie, why don't you get an umbrella, go up on top of the roof of the garage and jump off? And I said, oh my God, don't give him any more ideas. He had enough. He was always getting hurt. Doctors, I can tell you one thing. All the neighborhoods used to, before we had our animals, they're all little. And they always played baseball in our backyard. And they were playing one day, and Billy Connors came in holding his stomach. And I said, what happened? He says, something just hit me. And I took him, his mother and father went there, so I took him down to Dr. Orr's, and somebody shot. They were target practicing over by Dale's Bridge, that little house. And the bullet went from there over and hit him in his thing. Wow. If it had any of the other kids that hit it, it would have been in their head. But it hit him, and I met him at his mother's funeral. And he had just had that bullet out. He had it all those years. Wow.
What year was that?
Oh, Frankie was about 5, so that would be, he was born in 1958, 59.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Frankie is now 68, Eileen is now 70, and Sharon's almost 73. 72? 73.
Yes, I'm 72, gonna be 73 shortly.
72. I always want to always give her another year.
She's as old as Rich.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about was, do you have any stories or recollections of Dale's Bridge? Recollections of Dale's Bridge being... Do you remember Dale's Bridge being rebuilt?
Yes, I remember Dale's Bridge. We went there all the time.
Do you remember when they moved it and built the new one?
No, that bridge was, I think that bridge was always there. I can't remember that.
Okay.
Maybe not.
No.
The bridge was up higher?
No, remember the old Dale's Bridge that as kids we used to jump off of?
Yeah, that was...
That's not there anymore.
That's not there anymore? Oh, okay, that's what, they used to go up there and jump off all the time. I'm sure you might have been one.
It was great. So
I don't know why
after 5 o'clock,
people get hurt.
the lifeguard would leave at 5 o'clock and then after dark.
It was a nice place to swim.
It was.
It really was. It was a nice place to swim.
Down there, and you can just like wade now.
We went to Lake Taconic all the time. The church used to have picnics out at Lake Taconic. And we always went out there. There wasn't much in Hudson to do until they opened up Oakdale. They started a youth group and stuff. We never had anything like that. We never had we never were inside of the house. We were always out. That's why I got skin cancer. We were always outside in the sun. We either played deck on the rock, or we played tag, or we played well, there was 5 of us in the neighborhoods. We all had something to do. When the bridge opened, and that's been a good many years, we took bicycle rides and went across the bridge over to Athens, and then we got on the ferry and brought the ferry back. Frankie said that he was used to, not Frankie, but my husband, that's where he learned to swim. And the people from the, coming out of the ferry would throw money down to him, and they would go to get it. But he did more things when he was young than we did. We lived on, the one thing I remember is Mr. Delaney made his own ice cream. And he had a little cart, and once a week we were allowed to have ice cream from him. That was a thing. But there was no cars, so we played baseball and all this stuff in the road. We never had a place to go play it. We just played out on the road, and we played out in the sun. And now they're inside watching the computer, or learning the computer, or watching the videos, or they never get outside.
They don't get skin cancer though.
I guess she does. I don't know. But most of them do. Most of them work on the computer, or now it's the cell phone. You can't go anyplace without a cell phone. We couldn't even get in the doctors without a cell phone to tell them we were there.
Do you have any questions that you wanted to be included?
No, I don't think so. Do you have any questions?
Anything, Rich?
No, I can tell you that out of my 3 kids, all got married to nice fellows. They each had kids, so I had 9 grandsons. I have 9 great-grandsons. No, 3 great-granddaughters and 6 great-grandsons. The oldest one is going to be 30, right?
Yes, he's going to be 30 next year.
And the youngest is 4. And they're all in between. The twins were born in Washington State. The first one was born in Utica.
Yeah, see, you forgot all the trips that you took to go see babies being born.
Yeah,
You went to Italy, you went to St. Croix, you went to Seattle.
We went all over the place. I can't remember them all, Sharon. My mind is too full. But Taylor was born up in, I think it was Utica, or somewhere in that
yes.
place. So his other grandmother, Florence Olmsted, and I decided we were going to go up and see him. So we got on the thruway from the I-90 there, and we looked at the sign. The sign's a great big sign, New York City. And I said to her, we don't want to go to New York City. We want to go to Utica. We want to go up by Albany. So we took the other road, and guess where we went up? we were in Massachusetts. And we made a quick turnaround, and we were able to get off of it and turn around and come back, and then we could realize that New York City went that way and Albany went that way, but they didn't have that on the sign. So we went up and we had a good time. Saw the baby for the first time. He was our first great-grandchild, and that was just 30 years ago. Oh, now I could look at this and see if I have anything. My eyes are watering.
Do you have any follow-up questions, Rich?
I think I told you all about working in Woolworths, didn't I?
I remember Lightheart's store pretty well. They sold ice cream in Lightheart's store.
Lightheart's.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Lightheart's was Charlie and George. Charlie Schroeder and George Rothschild's stores first. They were the one that made the place. It was really, and then eventually the church built it and made a parking lot out of it.
Yeah. I missed the ice cream though. That was good.
Oh, Delaney's ice cream was delicious. The only thing that comes close to it is Stewart's. Stewart's has good ice cream, but his homemade ice cream was, and of course it was a treat for us. A treat for all 5 of us lined up and got an ice cream cone. I was born in 1929, 28, the Depression came in 1929. So I remember my house, my mother's father's house was the hub. Everybody came there every weekend. They came from New York City. My uncle lived in New York City. After he got out of the army, he was assigned to England during the war, and he came back. He was there for 27 months, and he came back, and then he went to New York and worked down there. Everybody else worked in the Lone Star, from my grandfather, my great-grandfather. I had my one great-grandfather worked on the docks in Athens where the ferry was. I don't know whether the world has changed for the good or the better. I think we had a time that we all pulled together, we all stayed together. If somebody needed help, there was a group of people there. If somebody had a surgery, suppers for a week so that they wouldn't have to get up and do anything. You lose that because that tight community isn't there anymore. I remember Audrey Breaker and I, after Frank died, we would go into the Hudson Hobo and bowl, and we went in one night with it, and it started snowing, and I'm telling you, 2 women in a car. Oh, but we made it home. She was told she shouldn't go in, and she went in anyway. We had a lot of fun bowling. My mother and father bowled with us. Frank and I, and we had the comic strip mixed league, and we met a lot of people through there that we had, but they're all gone too. They were all old when we went there, with Frank and I's age, and I don't know, is the Hobo and Catskills still open?
Yes, yep. Yep.
It is?
Yep.
So that's good, so at least they got a place to bowl. They loved roller skating, and we used to go up there. It was up towards Round Top somewhere.
Yeah, Pearling.
Pearling, that's it.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still open, I think.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. I could skate all right, but I couldn't stand still. Once I sat still, I was down on the floor. So when I was finished skating, I'd get right onto my skates. Ice skating. We used to ice skate when I was kids. We lived alongside of Healy's farm over there, and he had a bull. But there was a pond in front of the bull that used to ice skate. He told us we could go over there. Well, we went over one time and the bull got out. And we all took off like there was no tomorrow.
Now, Healy's farm, where is that in Greenport?
Healy's?
Yeah.
Well, it used to be where ShopRite used to be. Now there's the mall. That whole land used to be Healy's farm.
Okay.
They had fruit, they had dairy, and it was everything. And they had a little store that you could go and buy clothes from. That's all gone. It's all divided up. It's big things aren't anymore. There aren't big things anymore. Everything is little houses. I can't think of anything else. Unless you've got a question.
I remember we used to play Little League across from Connors. They had a ball field across from Connors' house.
Connor's house.
Yep.
Yeah, that's still there. The house before that used to be Aunt May. Pearls.
Aunt
Aunt
Pearl's
Pearl
house.
used to live there. And then Sarah's bought it. And Sarah and his wife were from New York City. But he still had all the Italian ways. They used to, Barlotta had a trap for birds, for the starlings that were eating his fruit. And Mr. Sarah would go up and get all the starlings and make spaghetti sauce out of it.
Really?
I went over one day and he said, "How about a cookie?" And he took this cookie out and he soaked it in rum. Oh, was that hot? But that was all the old things he did. And then she was so unhappy that she tried to commit suicide, and then he moved back into the city. He had all kinds of things that he could do, but she missed getting on a bus and going to see the museums, or going to see a play, or going to see a movie. That was all in her thing, and that's what the city is so attractive.
Yeah.
It's, because of that stuff. But today, I don't think it's a very good place to be. I think that's why they're all up here.
Is it Ruth Wright? She's like,
Yes.
Ruth Wright is 98, she's blind.
she's blind.
No, I don't, she might remember a little, but I don't think she'd be good at it.
Oh, okay.
She doesn't see anything, it's completely blind.
How's her memory?
We're always talking, but I'm the one that does the,
Well, but maybe we could get you two together.
well, I'll talk to her about it, but I don't know whether she'll do it or not. She's
Stays-
98.
Yeah,
She stays pretty much at home, so you
I-
would want to be
yeah.
able to go up there.
Well, I know Kenny.
I was going to say, you could talk to Kenny, you could talk to Marilyn, they're the two
Yeah.
that basically take care of her.
Yeah.
That's what I said, we're the only two left out of the whole group.
But if you two got together, even if we,
Well, I can ask her about some things. I know they used to go with Thelma and Don Klein and Al Bender and Loretta when the boys got old enough to help with the cows. They used to go camping for weekends, the six of them. I was working, so I never went with them. But they all had good camping. We always went camping.
Yeah.
Sharon and I went camping one time. We went out to 5 Rivers, and we decided to put the tent on the beach. Well, we got it all
Rhode
done.
Island, yes.
And the wind came up, and the tent was like a balloon. But there was enough of us down on the ground that we didn't fly away. But we went through. There was boats. There was all different kinds of boats there. A museum of boats, and the one I remember most is going through the submarine. And I thought, I don't know how anybody a normal thing, because I just made it, but I don't know how the normal Navy man could make it through it, because I just made it through it.
My oldest loved boats, and we went to Mystic Seaport, and we went to visit all the little, the USS ships that were all moored around. So we would camp when we go.
is Loretta Bender still alive?
Loretta Bender?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, she's dead. Loretta and Al, they had a dairy farm there.
Yeah.
And Mary and Floyd Cooper, you remember them?
No.
Oh, they were a little older than you were. They were members of the church.
I remember the Breakers pretty well.
Breakers, Harry and Barry.
Yep.
I had lost track of them. The last time I knew Barry was down in Saugerty's place, somewhere down there, on the outside of Saugerty. I don't know where Harry went.
He's over in Catskill, I think.
Billy Bender's still around.
Yes, yeah.
He might be able to help you with some remembering. Who else?
Who lived in the farm across Wire Road from Light Hearts and the church?
Across from the church?
Yeah,
That-
across
That was
water.
Yeah.
the camp she was talking about.
Okay.
That used to be Camp Dayro.
Okay.
That farm was, it wasn't made until lately. That's where the camp was.
Okay.
And Mary, remember Mary? What was her name?
I can't remember it, but they don't own it anymore.
We had Frank brought home a blue tick hun one day, and it wouldn't stay here. It kept going over to Mary and John's house. So finally they asked us if they could keep it. I said, by all means, he isn't here anytime. But, and Charlie Zeke was the kids' home, a little little teeny pup that they found out in the woods. And I come home from work and she said, we had to give her a bath because she was so fluffy. But that was Lady. We had Lady for a long time.
How about Big Rock?
How about what?
The kids must, Sharon, did you ever go swimming down at Big Rock?
Yeah, my brother would have been the one that did that more
Yeah.
than.
Down on the Rojan, right below Camp Dayro, is the Big Rock. It's the swimming hole.
The Big Rock swimming
Oh,
hole.
the big
Yeah.
rocks. That was kids. The kids went down there to fish, and they had to go past the. Oh, I don't know whether I should put this on paper or not. They had to go past the fish hatchery, and of course,
It's the fish hatchery, right?
yeah, the fish hatchery was down in the thing. It wasn't working when we were there. It was a house, and a couple of men bought it. And when the kids went down to fish, they told her, please don't come here at such and such a time because we like to sunbath.
Oh,
Yeah, but
Yeah, Camp Dayro used to have a lot of cabins. Do you remember the cabins that were there?
Yep.
And they had a swimming pool
Yeah,
and they
we had a
had
party there after our graduation.
yeah, quite a bit.
yeah, that's about all I know. I can't remember. You know, your mind at 92, your mind goes round and round and round and round, and
It's
Stops.
happening already.
it stops where it wants to, and you remember what you want to, and that's it.
Yes, when she and Ruth get together, they do reminisce quite a bit.
Yeah, I think we should try and do that. Well, I'll try to.
Well, I'm lucky. I still live alone. I have 3 kids to take me to the doctors or anywhere I want to go. I still can take care of my own house, even though I have neuropathy. That's the worst thing. So I consider God has been blessed me. He has taken care of me all my life.
Very good. Well, thanks so much, Gert. All right.